And we talked about it. How would they feel, the Browns feel, at the beginning of the draft if you went offensive tackle receiver? They're all in on Shedeur Sanders, bro. Like I'm telling you, they got an offensive tackle and they got this receiver. And he is 5'9", 182. He looks small, plays bigger than it is. But look at his production, 28 touchdowns and 38.
I think what you see is elite playmaking ability. That's in him. You've seen it. We've seen it. You saw it in college. You saw it on tape last year. Sure, there's a ways to go, but what rookie isn't? I mean, what first-year player doesn't have a long way to go? So I'm excited to get started with him and all of our quarterbacks and all of our players.
You're Shedeur. They drafted two guys, or Deshaun Watson, whoever's going to be the quarterback. We would assume it's going to be Shedeur. They drafted two guys on the offense side of the ball because they know this is our Achilles heel. We are set on defense.
Everybody thought the Cleveland Browns quarterback competition would be the biggest storyline of the offseason. Deshaun Watson's future, the arrival of young quarterbacks, the constant debates on sports radio, all of it seemed like the center of attention. But what if everyone has been looking at the wrong story this entire time? What if the real story has been unfolding behind the scenes, quietly, while most fans were focused on the depth chart? Because the more people look at what Todd Monken has been doing over the last few months, the harder it becomes to ignore one possibility. He may be preparing to show the NFL a version of Shedeur Sanders that nobody in Cleveland has truly seen before. That's the conversation gaining momentum right now. Not because Monken has come out and made some bold public declaration, not because the Browns have officially handed anything to Shedeur Sanders, but because actions speak louder than press conferences, and the actions coming from this organization are starting to tell a very interesting story. Every move, every adjustment, every addition to the offense seems to point toward a larger vision. A vision that looks suspiciously tailored to the strengths that made Shedeur Sanders one of the most talked about young quarterbacks in football. What's making this even more fascinating is the growing belief that Monken may see something in Shedeur that Kevin Stefanski never fully tapped into. That is not an attack on Stefanski. Nobody is questioning his accomplishments or what he has done for the Browns organization, but coaching staffs can evaluate players differently. Offensive coordinators can see opportunities that others don't prioritize. And right now, some insiders and analysts are starting to wonder whether Monken views Shedeur Sanders through a completely different lens than the Browns have in the past. Think about what made Shedeur successful throughout his rise. He was never the quarterback who relied purely on athleticism. He wasn't the quarterback who survived on broken plays alone. His game has always been built around timing, accuracy, confidence, quick decisions, and the ability to stay calm under pressure.
How excited should Shedeur Sanders be? T, you said Shedeur needed a left tackle one and he needed a receiver one. I don't know if KC, I was looking at him prior to today, I don't know if he's a wide receiver one. I think he's a really good two. I think he is very, he's a really good, the receiver that was played for Arizona, then played for the Jags, then went to the Texans out of Texas A&M, that other receiver.
Christian Kirk?
Yes. I think he's like, he'll give you that type of production. He'll give you a 700-yard season.
Fair. That's fair.
He'll give you a 900-yard season.
I don't know. But this is the thing. One, I agree with you.
Those traits don't always jump off the screen the same way a huge arm or elite speed does. But in the right system, those traits can become incredibly dangerous. And that is exactly why so many people are paying attention to what Monken is building right now. The timing of all this makes it impossible to ignore. Instead of creating uncertainty at quarterback, the Browns have spent much of this offseason strengthening the environment around the position itself. They have focused on improving support structures rather than creating more chaos. That approach has left many people asking a simple question. If the organization wasn't confident in its young quarterbacks, why spend so much energy building an offense designed to help one succeed? The answer may not be official, but plenty of observers believe they already know where this is heading. They believe Monken understands that quarterback development is not just about talent. It is about environment. It is about putting players in situations where their strengths can actually shine. And if that is the philosophy driving Cleveland's decisions, then Shedeur Sanders may be closer to a major opportunity than many people realize. What makes this storyline even more powerful is that it flips the entire conversation. For months, critics have questioned whether Shedeur Sanders is ready. They have questioned his ceiling. They have questioned whether he can handle the pressure. But now a different question is starting to emerge. What if the issue was never about what Shedeur could do? What if the bigger issue was whether the Browns were ever fully committed to putting him in a position to succeed? That question is becoming harder to dismiss with every passing week. Because when you step back and look at the full picture, It does not look like a franchise preparing for uncertainty. It looks like a franchise preparing for a plan. And at the center of that plan sits a quarterback who may finally be getting the opportunity that his supporters have been waiting for all along. Todd Monken may not be saying it publicly. He may not need to. The moves themselves are starting to say enough. If the first part of this story was about Todd Monken seeing something different in Shedeur Sanders, the second part is about the moves that are making people believe it. Because once fans started looking beyond the headlines and focusing on what the Browns have actually done this offseason, a pattern began to emerge. And the more that pattern becomes visible, the more difficult it is to dismiss as coincidence.
His progressions, getting the ball out, his understanding of concepts, I think he's really come a long way.
The defense was able to have a couple heads up.
Suddenly, every move starts looking less like a normal roster decision and more like a calculated effort to build the perfect environment for a young quarterback to succeed. One of the biggest reasons this conversation has exploded is because of the Browns' approach to the draft. Teams often talk about taking the best player available. They talk about adding talent wherever they can find it. But what Cleveland did feels more intentional than that. It feels targeted. It feels like every major decision had a purpose attached to it. Instead of chasing flashy headlines, they focused on strengthening key areas that directly impact quarterback development, and that is where people started connecting the dots to Shedeur Sanders. Take Spencer Fano, for example. Offensive line play rarely dominates national headlines, but anyone who understands football knows how important protection is for a young quarterback. Confidence starts with protection. Timing starts with protection. Development starts with protection. If a quarterback spends every snap running for his life, growth becomes almost impossible. By investing heavily in the offensive line, the Browns sent a message that stability matters. And when people looked at that move through the lens of Shedeur Sanders, the significance became even larger. Then came the additions at receiver and the continued emphasis on creating a more quarterback-friendly offense. Suddenly, analysts started pointing out how these pieces fit together. Quick separators, reliable targets, players capable of turning short completions into explosive gains. These are exactly the types of weapons that help a quarterback settle into a rhythm. These are exactly the types of weapons that maximize accuracy and decision-making, and those happen to be some of the biggest strengths associated with Shedeur Sanders throughout his football career. Former NFL players and analysts have begun noticing the same thing. Chase Daniel has openly discussed how the roster construction appears to support the development of a quarterback with Shedeur's skill set. Others around the league have echoed similar thoughts. What makes this so interesting is that these observations are not coming from die-hard Browns fans trying to push a narrative. They are coming from football people who spend their careers studying schemes, personnel decisions, and organizational strategy. When multiple voices start reaching similar conclusions independently, fans tend to pay attention. What is especially interesting is what the Browns have not done. Throughout the offseason, there were opportunities to create panic. There were opportunities to make dramatic quarterback moves. There were opportunities to bring in more competition and create another layer of uncertainty. Yet Cleveland never seemed interested in operating that way. Instead, they remained surprisingly disciplined. They focused on building the roster rather than chasing headlines. That approach has fueled even more speculation that the organization already has a vision for where things are heading. This is where Todd Monken's influence becomes impossible to ignore. Offensive coordinators understand something that many fans overlook.
That Shedeur fits Todd Monken's offense way better than he fit Stefanski's offense. Like, this is a 4 wide, spread it out, see it, quarterback run game, get him on the move. He's not a great athlete.
They wanted to draft him when he was in Baltimore.
That's what I'm
they
saying.
wanted to draft him.
And that's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. This, to me, is probably the best spot that Shedeur Sanders is going to be in.
I have to fully agree with Chase. I mean, if you are Shedeur Sanders, you have to be elated with how the draft is going. You sitting on the couch after the last year debacle of the draft, and the draft this year should make you as happy as last year's draft made you sad. Obviously, a little bit of hyperbole there. But you get Fano, that's huge. That's huge. You took so many unnecessary sacks last year, Shedeur Sanders, and then you get KC's Concepcion. Like, the Browns have unknowingly done everything they can for Shedeur. I say unknowingly because last year you acquire Quinshon Judkins. You acquire Harold Fannin. This year you acquire Fano. You acquire Concepcion. You acquire 4 offensive starters, not counting Shedeur.
Quarterbacks rarely succeed because of talent alone. They succeed because the system around them allows their strengths to flourish. The best coordinators identify what a player does well and build from there. They don't force players into uncomfortable situations. They create opportunities for confidence to grow. And right now, there are growing signs that Monkin may be doing exactly that. What makes this storyline so compelling is that the pieces actually fit together. Better protection, better weapons, more structure, more balance. Everything points toward creating an offense where a young quarterback can operate efficiently rather than carrying the entire team on his shoulders. That matters because nobody is asking Shedeur Sanders to become a superhero overnight. The goal is much simpler than that. The goal is to put him in position to execute, make smart decisions, move the chains, and allow the rest of the roster to do its job. As more people study what the Browns have been doing, another fascinating detail keeps surfacing. This does not look like an organization preparing for a temporary solution at quarterback. It looks like an organization preparing for long-term stability. And if that observation is correct, then Todd Monken may already be thinking several steps ahead of everyone else. While most of the football world debates who should take the first snap, Monken appears focused on something much bigger. He appears focused on creating a system that can succeed for years, not just survive for one season. That distinction matters because too many quarterback conversations become obsessed with immediate results. Fans want to know who starts week 1. Analysts want to predict depth charts. Social media wants instant answers. But successful organizations often think differently. They think about development. They think about sustainability. They think about how a young quarterback can grow into a role instead of being thrown into chaos. And when people look at Cleveland's recent moves through that lens, the picture becomes much clearer. This is one reason why so many observers believe Todd Monken sees tremendous potential in Shedeur Sanders. Not because Shedeur is expected to carry the offense by himself, not because he is being asked to throw for 5,000 yards, but because his strengths naturally align with the type of offense Monken appears to be building. Accuracy, timing, decision-making, ball placement, composure under pressure. These qualities often become far more valuable when surrounded by the right structure. And structure is exactly what the Browns seem determined to create. Former players have repeatedly emphasized that quarterback confidence can change everything. A confident quarterback processes information faster. A confident quarterback trusts his reads. A confident quarterback delivers the football without hesitation. That confidence usually doesn't come from motivational speeches. It comes from preparation. It comes from trust in the offensive line. It comes from trust in receivers. It comes from knowing exactly where teammates will be when the play unfolds. Every major move the Browns have made this offseason appears designed to strengthen those areas. This is where the conversation starts becoming uncomfortable for some critics. For years, people have found reasons to question Shedeur Sanders. They questioned the competition he faced. They questioned his style of play. They questioned whether his success would translate to the next level. But now there is a growing possibility that those debates may soon be replaced by something else entirely. What happens if Shedeur gets placed in a system specifically designed to maximize his strengths? What happens if the environment around him finally matches the skill set that made him successful in the first place? That possibility is exactly why excitement continues growing among his supporters. They believe Todd Monken understands something many people overlooked. Football is not about forcing quarterbacks into systems that do not fit them. It is about creating systems that allow quarterbacks to perform at their highest level. The best coaches throughout NFL history have done exactly that. They adapted, they adjusted, they built around strengths instead of obsessing over weaknesses. And right now, there are signs that Monken may be applying that same philosophy in Cleveland. What makes this even more interesting is the contrast with the way the national media continues discussing the Browns. Many outlets still frame the situation as a simple quarterback competition. They focus on who wins reps, they focus on practice reports, they focus on the daily drama. But insiders are increasingly looking at the bigger picture. They are examining the roster construction. They are examining the offensive additions. They are examining the philosophy behind the moves. And when they do, they keep arriving at a similar conclusion. The Browns seem far more organized than people realize. The organization is not acting like a team searching desperately for answers. It is acting like a team implementing a plan. Every move feels connected. Every decision feels intentional. That does not guarantee success, of course. Nothing in the NFL is guaranteed. But it does suggest that Cleveland's leadership believes it knows exactly what type of offense it wants to become. And if Todd Monken truly has significant influence over that vision, then Shedeur Sanders may be sitting in a much stronger position than many outsiders currently understand. And that brings us to the part of the story that may be the most important of all. Todd Monken is not simply adding talent around the quarterback position. He appears to be removing excuses. One by one, the obstacles that can derail a young quarterback's development are being addressed. Better protection, better weapons, better structure, better balance. The Browns are quietly creating an environment where success becomes much easier to evaluate. And if Shedeur Sanders gets his opportunity in that environment, the conversation around him could change very quickly. This is exactly why so many people are paying attention to what happens next. In previous years, whenever a young quarterback struggled, fans immediately pointed to everything around him. The offensive line was blamed, the receivers were blamed, the coaching was blamed, the system was blamed. Sometimes those criticisms were fair, sometimes they were not. But those arguments become much harder to make when an organization spends an entire offseason strengthening every major area that impacts quarterback performance. Think about the situation Shedeur Sanders could potentially walk into. Instead of being asked to rescue a broken offense, he may be stepping into one that has been carefully designed to support him. That is a huge difference. Young quarterbacks often fail because organizations expect them to solve every problem themselves. The Browns do not appear to be following that approach. They appear to be doing the opposite. They are building a framework first and then identifying which quarterback can operate within it most effectively. That philosophy says a lot about Todd Monken. The best offensive minds understand that development is not about throwing a player into the deep end and hoping he survives. Development is about creating confidence. It is about creating rhythm. It is about putting a quarterback in situations where success becomes repeatable. Every move Cleveland has made seems connected to that idea. They are not creating a system that demands perfection. They are creating a system that rewards smart football. And that is where Shedeur Sanders becomes such an interesting fit. Throughout his career, one of his biggest strengths has been his ability to stay composed. Even in difficult situations, he has consistently shown patience and confidence. He has never been the type of quarterback who panics after one mistake. He trusts his preparation. He trusts his reads. He trusts his ability to make the next play. Those traits become even more valuable when surrounded by a stable supporting cast. That is exactly the type of environment Monkin appears determined to create. What is fascinating is how much the narrative has changed over the last several months. Early on, many people framed Shedeur as a developmental project. Others questioned whether he would ever receive a legitimate opportunity. Some even believed the Browns would continue searching aggressively for other options. But look at where things stand today. The organization is not behaving like a team that lacks direction. It is behaving like a team that knows exactly what it wants to accomplish. That shift has caused analysts to revisit earlier assumptions. Suddenly, people are no longer asking whether Shedeur belongs in the conversation. They are asking how close he may actually be to becoming a major part of Cleveland's future. That is a completely different discussion, and it is one that would have sounded ridiculous to some critics just a few months ago. Yet here we are, watching more evidence emerge every week that suggests the Browns have been preparing for this possibility all along. Another reason this storyline keeps gaining momentum is because of how disciplined the organization has remained. There has been no panic. There have been no desperate moves. There have been no dramatic attempts to overhaul the quarterback room at the last second. Instead, Cleveland has remained focused on improving the roster around the position. That decision alone tells you a lot. Teams that are terrified about their quarterback situation usually act differently. They chase quick fixes. They make emotional decisions. The Browns have done neither. Instead, they have continued reinforcing the foundation. And when fans see that happening repeatedly, it naturally raises questions. Why build this much support? Why invest this much effort into creating stability? Why focus so heavily on making life easier for a quarterback? The answer may be simpler than people think, because Todd Monken believes somebody is eventually going to benefit from all of it. And the name that keeps appearing in those conversations is Shedeur Sanders. Now the pressure is starting to shift, and that may be the biggest sign yet that something important is happening inside the Browns organization. Because for the longest time, every discussion centered around what Shedeur Sanders needed to prove. Could he handle the spotlight? Could he win over coaches? Could he operate at the NFL level? Could he lead a locker room? Those questions dominated every conversation. But as training camp gets closer and the roster around him continues to improve, a different question is beginning to take over. What if the Browns have already done everything possible to prepare him for success, and now the rest of the league is about to find out what Todd Monken has been seeing all along? That possibility is exactly why excitement continues growing among Browns fans and Shedeur supporters. The situation today looks completely different than it did just a few months ago. Back then, many people viewed Shedeur as simply another name in the quarterback room. A talented player, sure, but not necessarily someone the organization was preparing to build around. Now that perception is changing. Not because of one interview, not because of one practice report, but because of the pattern of decisions Cleveland continues to make. The moves are becoming harder and harder to ignore. What makes this so interesting is that Todd Monken has never looked like someone interested in playing games with player development. Throughout his coaching career, he has earned a reputation for maximizing talent and putting players in positions where they can perform confidently. Great coordinators understand that football is not about forcing players into uncomfortable roles. It is about identifying strengths and building systems that allow those strengths to impact games. That philosophy has helped Monkin succeed everywhere he has coached, and many believe he is applying that same mindset in Cleveland right now. If that is true, then the upcoming months could become extremely important for Shedeur Sanders. Because everything the Browns have been doing appears designed to create clarity. No confusion, no chaos, no excuses, just an opportunity to evaluate what a quarterback can do when surrounded by a functional supporting cast. That is something many young quarterbacks around the league never receive. Some are thrown into impossible situations. Others spend years overcoming problems created by poor roster construction. Cleveland seems determined not to make that mistake, and perhaps that is where Kevin Stefanski enters this conversation again. Not because there is some dramatic conflict behind the scenes, not because there is a power struggle, but because there is a growing belief that Todd Monken wants to unlock a version of Shedeur Sanders that fans have only seen in flashes. Monken appears to understand that confidence changes everything for a quarterback. When a player trusts the scheme, trusts the protection, trusts the receivers, and trusts the coaching staff, performance often rises to another level. The Browns may be creating exactly that kind of environment. The interesting part is how quickly public perception can change in the NFL. One successful training camp can change opinions. One impressive preseason performance can shift an entire narrative. One stretch of strong play can force analysts to reevaluate everything they thought they knew. That is why this offseason matters so much. The foundation is being built right now. The expectations are forming right now. The opportunity is getting closer with every passing week. And if Shedeur Sanders takes advantage of that opportunity, many of the same people who doubted him may suddenly find themselves scrambling to explain what they missed. You can already see signs of that shift beginning. More analysts are talking about Shedeur seriously. More insiders are mentioning his fit within the offense. More fans are starting to believe there is a genuine path forward. The conversation is no longer centered exclusively on whether he belongs. The conversation is becoming about what happens if he succeeds. That is a massive change from where things stood not long ago, and it is one of the strongest indicators that the Browns may be much further along in their plans than most outsiders realize. What makes this entire story so compelling is that nobody inside the organization needs to announce anything. They do not need to hold a press conference and declare their intentions. The work speaks for itself. The roster speaks for itself. The direction speaks for itself. Every move continues pointing towards stability, development, and preparation. Those are not the actions of a franchise wandering without a plan. Those are the actions of a franchise quietly building towards something bigger. Everything now comes down to one moment. Months of roster moves, months of planning, months of speculation, and months of debate are all leading toward the same destination. Training camp is approaching. The competition is getting real. The spotlight is getting brighter. And for the first time, it feels like the entire conversation surrounding Shedeur Sanders is about to be tested on the field instead of argued about online. Because at some point, talking ends and football begins. And when that moment arrives, Todd Monken may finally get the chance to show exactly why he has spent this offseason building the way he has. What makes this situation so fascinating is that the expectations around Shedeur Sanders are completely different than they were when the offseason began. Back then, many people viewed him as an interesting prospect with plenty to prove. Some believed he would need years before becoming a serious option. Others questioned whether he would ever receive a true opportunity in Cleveland. Fast forward to today, and the discussion has changed dramatically. Now people are asking whether the Browns have quietly spent months preparing the perfect situation for him to succeed. That shift did not happen by accident. It happened because every major move the organization made started pointing in the same direction. Better protection, better weapons, better structure, better support. Piece by piece, the Browns have created an environment that looks increasingly friendly for a developing quarterback. And the more complete that environment becomes, the more attention turns toward the player who could benefit from it the most. That player continues to be Shedeur Sanders. The reason this matters so much is because the NFL is full of quarterbacks who never received an opportunity like this. Talented players have entered difficult situations and watched their development stall before it ever had a chance to take off. Some were asked to carry bad rosters. Others were forced into systems that did not fit their strengths. Many never recovered. Todd Monken appears determined to avoid that outcome entirely. Rather than throwing a quarterback into chaos, he seems focused on creating stability first and allowing development to grow naturally from there. That is why some insiders believe the upcoming months are not just about determining a starter. They are about discovering whether Cleveland has found its future. Because if Shedeur Sanders performs well within this structure, a lot of old narratives could disappear very quickly. Suddenly, the conversations about limitations become less important. Suddenly, the doubts start losing power. Suddenly, the focus shifts toward what he can become instead of what critics claimed he could never be. And perhaps that is the biggest reason why Todd Monken's role in all of this has become such a major talking point. Many coaches talk about development. Many coaches talk about putting players in position to succeed. But what people are noticing in Cleveland is something different. They are noticing actions. They are noticing decisions. They are noticing a clear effort to build an offense that can support sustainable quarterback play. That is not something fans imagined. That is something visible in the moves the organization continues to make. The most intriguing part is that if Shedeur succeeds, it could completely reshape how people view this entire offseason. What looked like ordinary roster construction would suddenly look strategic. What looked like routine additions would suddenly look intentional. What looked like patience would suddenly look like vision. And that is why so many people are paying attention to every development surrounding this team. Because if the plan works, people may look back and realize the signs were there all along. For Todd Monken, this could be an opportunity to prove that talent often needs the right environment to flourish. For the Browns, it could be an opportunity to finally establish long-term stability at the most important position in football. And for Shedeur Sanders, it could be the opportunity that changes everything. Not because someone handed him anything, not because expectations were lowered, but because he earned the chance to step into a system designed to help him maximize his strengths and show exactly what he is capable of doing. The next few months will provide the answers that fans have been waiting for. The speculation will end. The theories will be tested. The debates will finally move from social media to the football field. And if Todd Monken truly believes Shedeur Sanders can become the quarterback that many people overlooked, then training camp may be the beginning of something much bigger than a simple quarterback battle. It may be the start of a completely new chapter for the Cleveland Browns. And if that chapter unfolds the way Monken appears to envision it, the people who spent months doubting Shedeur Sanders may soon find themselves asking one uncomfortable question. What if Todd Monken saw the future before everyone else did? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss any Browns news, Shedeur Sanders updates, or breaking developments from training camp. And let us know in the comments. Do you think Todd Monken is quietly building this offense for Shedeur Sanders? Or is the NFL world reading too much into the signs?